Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you for the presentation this morning. We're very excited to be here as well. So today we're going to present Asclepios, which is our mission. It's a student-led analog space mission, and I will start by saying what Asclepios is, but first I just want to introduce three people that are here. So it's me, I'm Veronica, I'm the project leader and president of Asclepios, and I've been for the last year, and I'm here with
Loïc. I've been already part of the first mission, but in the second mission I'm the vice president and the head of the Astronaut Team, and so we came with the third person, which is our mascot. It's named Loïc, which stands for Lunar Observer and Ice Companion. So if you don't understand why now, just wait until the end of the presentation. We'll ask you the question again and maybe you'll have the answer.
So, okay, Asclepios is a project supervised by the EPFL Space Laboratory. It was born 3 years ago. The goal is to do, as I mentioned, one mission a year. But we are currently at our second iteration. Because of COVID, the first mission lasted 2 years. So this is Asclepios 2, and this is the mission we are leading. So our main goals are three in particular. So the first one is education. We want to train the next generation of space leaders under different forms. We will see why. We not only have analog astronauts, but we have a pretty big team of students working for the mission. And the goal is to have as many students as possible participating, motivated of course by space and wanting to work more or less in the space sector, giving all of them the opportunity to participate to the project. We want to be a platform, of course, for innovative space projects and research, like most of us here, I think. And also we keep an eye on sustainability while doing our work, which means also from the point of view of the logistic organization of the mission, but also for the goal of the mission. So why are we here today? Well, first of all, we want to talk about the Asclepios concept by focusing in particular on three aspects of our mission, which are the base design, which is a process that is pretty peculiar of our mission, how our mission control center works, what scientific experiments we do, and also the astronaut training and selection, which is also a very peculiar aspect of the Asclepios missions. So everything will be done with a presentation, talking in particular about Asclepios 2, which is the mission we are currently leading. So a bit about the second Asclepios mission. So this is our mission statement. What we want to do is that we want to simulate a colony on the lunar South Pole, and we want to extract in situ resources for purposes of sustainability. As I said, as we know, if we try to extract and use resources on the moon, it means that we can maybe have a colony that is almost or completely self-sustainable. So this is why we orient the research this year toward that goal. And of course our main focus is water, since we recently of course discovered the presence of water under the lunar soil or stuck in the regolith. And all the scientific experiments turn around this main objective, but not only, we will see later in detail. So our second mission will be located at the Sasso San Gottardo, which is a fortress from the Second World War, which has been unraveled in 2001. And it's abandoned, or almost abandoned, ever since. There is a museum there, a foundation that is helping us through the mission design process. But the location has been selected based on different criteria. The first one is isolation. So we wanted a space where our analog astronauts were completely isolated for the whole duration of the mission. So we are on the Swiss Alps at 2,000 meters altitude, which assures us, of course, isolation. We selected a rocky landscape because this year we want to simulate the moon. So Asclepios is not focused on the moon. We could choose to go to Mars, for example, but according to the recent, of course, research that is done in space, and the fact that we are probably going to go to the moon soon, the Asclepios 1 and Asclepios 2 mission were actually simulating the moon. We also have a base. You can see the tunnels are just like in the picture there. So the fact that the space is empty gives us a lot of design possibilities. This is our mission type plan. So we do one mission a year. So this is the first time we'll do our mission actually in 1 year, because the first mission was done in 2 due to COVID again. So we will try to simulate a 2 weeks long mission, and we will have a mission control center monitoring the Analogue astronauts 24/7 for the whole duration of the mission. We will have a preliminary stage where we will set up the base, and the astronauts will be asked to quarantine, and then we will be transported to base to simulate also the psychological stress of having to wait before going into base, and the same thing will be done at the end of the mission. So it's going to be more of a 17-18 days long experience for the Analogue astronaut and the mission control center. So a bit about our team. So as you can see, a lot of young faces. We are all students going from end of high school to PhD. So our youngest member is 19, our oldest member is 32. Most of our members are between 22 and 25. So this is how the mission is done. We also have another very particular setup for the team, which is not very normal for a student association mostly. So our team is located almost everywhere in the world. If you see the graph where we're from, we are from 22 different countries. So our team is around 45 members, 22 nationalities and 10 countries where the team lives. Of course, Switzerland is the main one, but we also see France, Italy, Spain and Chile, which is a very represented nationality in the Asclepios mission. So we have different sub-teams in our team taking care of different things. So the first one is the management team, taking care of project lifecycle and team coordination and of course the finance. The astronaut team taking care of the recruitment, training, and then of course activities planned for the mission for the astronauts. We have the science team selecting and then implementing the scientific experiments during the mission. We have a design team fully in charge of designing the base from scratch according to our mission statement, and a communication team. So we have, to make this mission possible, of course, we have outside contributors, sponsors, partners and mentors that help us in different ways through the process. But I want to insist on the fact that all the decisions are ultimately taken by students. There is no non-student in the board taking decisions for the mission. These are some of our mentors that help us in different ways. I can, for example, show you Claude Collier. He's one of our fans. He's the one and only Swiss astronaut working at EPFL. He helped us with the astronaut selection process and the astronaut trainings. We have explorers helping us for the trainings, scientists helping us for the mission.
So, if we deep dive into the mission control center, a bit apart from the base, meaning that we don't just like stay close to it, we try to be a bit far, and we have a team of students that worked and prepared the mission that is there 24/7, monitoring the astronauts, talking with the astronauts, making sure the scientific data are relevant, that they're received. They discussed with the PIs that propose the experiments to make sure that they're happy with the data and everything that actually is required for this. So the objectives that we have is really to stay out there day and night and make sure that everything goes right. How it works is that all our team members can apply to be members of the MCC. It's not a requirement, but it's something that they can do. So we have a lot of trainings during the year, about one every 2 weeks sort of, where
they can try the different roles that we have in the Mission Control Center. We can see where they could fit. Obviously, there are some roles you'll see later that can only be made by specific persons working in the team. For example, BMEs, the biomedical engineer, which are made by medical students. And so basically, we select the roles, then we split according to the roles into different shifts. So we have 4 shifts in the day. 2 are of 8 hours and the two of the night or of 4 hours, because night shifts are lighter, because normally nothing should be happening during night unless some have nightmares. And so yeah, so the team is lighter during night, and then we have this training criteria that we have where we set up the procedures, all communication procedures, all data transfer procedures with our software that we develop ourselves. So the different roles that I was talking about. So first you have the flight director, who is the person that's leading and taking all decisions, meaning that if there is a problem, he or she will decide how to proceed, what to do, is it a go, is it a no-go, as we like to say. Then we have the Capcom, who are trained and selected astronauts that have been trained with the crew, because we selected 9 astronauts, and 6 go in the base, and then 3 stay as Capcoms, meaning that they are the first and only point of contact between the astronauts that are in the base and then all the other MCC members. Then we have someone that looks at everything related to science, meaning that he or she is going to look at all the data, all the experiments, and he or she is also going to take care of the planning of the mission. So we set up a flight plan that starts at 7, ends at 10 p.m. sort of, and they only have like a few moments of breaks, obviously, to like eat and things, but so that we have someone taking care of that in case there is a problem. There are changes that needs to be made. Then we have records that keeps track of everything that's happening, meaning, okay, if there's a power shutdown at 10:02, then this is going to be in the records to make sure that we can go back in time and see what happened. Also when we transmit the data, when we change the teams. And then finally we have contact that takes care of all the medias. And then finally BME, I was talking about earlier, who is someone that is like studying medicine and knows more or less how to handle if there is any medical emergency. And then we have a doctor also, obviously, professional doctor as a support, who's not in the MCC, but that we can call anytime if it's needed. So this are the shift that I was talking about earlier. So we have the first shift that starts at 6 a.m. until 2 p.m. or is it until 2 p.m. Then another team that starts at 2 until 10, and then we have the night shifts from 10 to 2, and then 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. So at night, you only have a flight director and a Capcom, because there should be less work to be done. But as we also know that, for example, when it's night and the like real mission control center, let's say at ESA or NASA, usually you have the flight that stays, but also the BME in case there is any medical emergency. But also, as we know that we have less medical students, we have a Capcom, but BMEs can be called at any time, day or night, obviously, and the doctor that we have as a support in case there is any medical emergency that we have to keep track on.
Yes. So a few words also about the base design. So we all know what is an analog base, I think. It's an habitat that simulates life on space but on Earth. The objective is to host the analog astronauts during the mission and allow scientific experiments. So we have to focus on different aspects of the location. So there is a virtual location, so what in space and time we want to set, where in space and time we want to set our base on the moon, and then when and where do we want to do it in reality. So let's focus first on what we did this year for the virtual then base location on the moon. So we based our selection on the primary mission goal, So the primary mission goal imposed a few criteria for selection, which were energy and water availability, communication coverage, and accessibility. And then we have some non-critical criteria, for example, sites of interest, sheltering, environment, and additional resources. So these ones are the factors, yes, that allow us to choose the location for our mission. So we selected, I don't know if you know the geography of the moon, but we selected a nearby crater, the Northwest Malpert Massive, and yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I'll just take over, even though that's not the part which I'm the most familiar in, because I'm not in the design team, but who cares? So the final decision. We have a design team that made some sort of like system engineering study on basically where actually we want to simulate our base. So we know that we want to go to the moon, we know that we want to go to the moon on a place where we can actually find in-situ resources, meaning mainly water, so we can have a sustainable base there. So our team did a study looking at, well, all the data that we can have from satellites in terms of temperature, of maybe water availability, and then depending on those criteria, decided, okay, we want to actually go to this specific place, but we also know that on Earth, depending on the different base that we can have and where we can set our analog base, well, the two actually need to match. So yes, we need to do this study to know where we want to simulate at the exact place on the moon, but also then on Earth, and mainly in Switzerland if we want to try to stay Swiss-based, where we can recreate this environment.
Yes, sorry, I take over again. This is the real base. To select the real base, then we have to pay attention to the primary criteria that I showed before. So the base that has been selected virtually, and then new criteria that will assure the simulation. So some of these criteria, for example, are the ease of access to the base. We need to be able to go there. Connectivity, so if we have a place nearby where we can set, for example, our mission control center, or any safety team that could stay by the base. Isolation, of course, we want our analog astronauts to leave the simulation truly without interruptions from other external human being. Storage, because we have a lot of material. A moon-like landscape, like I showed at the very beginning. And then security and first aid access and infrastructures. So this year, for example, we did a weighted matrix with the criteria. We went visiting and talking to different locations, mostly based in Switzerland, because we want to promote also the space sector in Switzerland, but not only. We also went, for example, in nearby areas in France and Italy. We did this weighted matrix, very complicated one. I'm not going to stay on it. And finally, our decision just fell on the Gotthard Fortress. So the Gotthard Fortress has a certain distance from EPFL, that is 236 kilometers. It's not next door. So it will be a logistic challenge, of course, but we are going to manage it with our awesome logistic team. We are pretty high altitude, so it's going to be cold, which is okay for the location we have selected on the moon. We also looked at temperatures, of course, and what temperatures could we have inside the base. Of course, we want to monitor everything inside the location to make it more realistic as possible. So inside the fortress we see temperatures of 6 to 7 degrees. We want to have a temperature between 14 and 18. And according to the temperature that would be on the moon at the time of the EVAs, we will change also the temperature monitoring inside the base and then select when to do the excursion outside for EVAs. So just to show you what I mean by versatility of the base, this is the base now. So it's empty, totally empty. You can see the tunnels where probably our analog astronauts will do EVAs, we can see a main room where most of the bays will be placed. That for the moment is just a storage room at the Sasso San Gottardo. And then we have accessible rooms in bays, which you can see where probably the astronauts will sleep or that will serve as bathrooms. But there is nothing there, so we have the possibility of designing the bays from scratches, which is a very hard task, of course, mostly in 1 year. But we have a design team that studies space architecture working on it. So I will continue with the science. So how do we select scientific experiments for Asclepios? So we have two ways. One are semester projects coming directly from the university nearby, which is the Polytechnical School of Lausanne, where our supervising lab is based. And then we have the call for project. So I invite you, mostly if you're interested in the mission, it opens every year in the fall. We collect projects from companies, startups, universities and privates that want to try to implement a project during the mission. So focusing on the call for project, which is more interesting probably for the public we have here, of course we ask to send projects that are linked to our primary mission goal. So this year it was of course the in-situ resources on the moon, so engineering and physics and environmental challenges. But we also have, of course, all the challenges that an Analogue mission has linked to psychology or life medicine. So we also have experience linked to secondary mission goals. So what are some of the projects we have? I'm not going to present all of them, but maybe the most exciting ones. So we have from the Politecnico of Milan, Lexicon, which is water mining in lunar habitat. We have an experiment from MIT for water collection. We have a lunar spectrometer from EPFL. So as you can see, those are projects that are directly linked to our primary goal. Then we have project links to life science and medicine. We have Astrocasco. We have the person in charge of the experiment here building the spacesuits, part of the spacesuits of the Analogue astronauts. And then we have also one project I'm very proud about, which is Figures. It's a project about gender equality. We have a specificity at Asclepios, which is totally by chance, but our team is composed of more than 50% of female. Also, our astronauts selected were 70% females. So we decided that we had to do something with our numbers, because unluckily the space sector is still very far behind with research in gender equality. So what we will do is that we will try to implement protocols for our female astronauts in base, but not only, also for the life in the Mission Control Center. So it will be a very global experiment about gender equality. Then finally, we also have experiments linked to, of course, environment, so crop cultivation and soil periods. Okay, this is just to say that our mission was born 3 years ago, but we are pretty quickly expanding. We participate at IEC in 2021, for example, and this is the picture from the event.
But this is, as everyone, I guess, where we try also to broadcast all the research that we do, publishing papers and presenting papers to the space community. Finally, I'm going to finish by talking a bit more into what we do inside the Astronaut Team. So I just wanted to show a picture of the team, because as I said, so obviously, as name states, we have the astronauts inside the Astronaut Team, but we also have other members that are really important, taking care of the recruitment of the Analogue astronauts, which is a big part, and then the training. We have 3 members taking care of everything that's related to medicine, medical emergency, medical procedures, and medical trainings, and someone that takes care of everything related to nutrition. As we know, it also has a great impact during a 2-week mission in isolation, also on the mental and behavior. So that these are things that I won't show later on in the presentation, but we kept some time later on for questions. So if you want to know more about it, you know it's there, and don't hesitate to ask questions. So our Analogue astronauts, as we said, we are a student-led Analogue space mission, so astronauts, Analogue astronauts, are also students, which is actually the only requirements that we have. Well, you need to be 18 also, otherwise we have legal problems, but you need to be students at any level, undergrad, master, PhD, maybe postdoc. We didn't have any applications about that yet, but as long as you are a student, you can basically apply to be an Analogue astronaut into Asclepios. So that's really the only requirement, and in the end, we select 8 or 9, because this year we selected 9 astronauts to be part of the mission. How the selection process works, it takes quite some time, about 5 to 6 months. So the first phase is, well, it's divided in 4 phases based on what ESA is doing, or what we know about what ESA is doing, because it's quite a, well, secret process, let's say. Well, we have now currently ongoing, and we don't know much about what's happening there, unless from some of the people that applied that we know. So the first phase that we have in the Asclepios selection process is first basically classic CV and cover letter that you send us. And then if you're selected, you're going to have a personality test where you're going to be asked to send a video to answer prepared questions. Well, you select and pick in a list of questions the one that you want to answer, and then we're going to have our team that is going to review it. But we also have space psychologists that are going to watch the video and give us some insight about your personality. Then phase C, which is the phase we are currently in for our 3rd mission, which I won't give a lot of details because I know here some people that are related to some people that applied, so I don't want to give too much hints. It's happening next Sunday actually. But so basically it's more of a technical test to assess interpersonal, intrapersonal skills, memory, cognition, a bit of some technicality. I won't go into more details. I'll stop here. And then finally, the last phase, which will happen this year, beginning of June, is a phase that needs to happen in presence in Lausanne, where we're going to have the final candidates. We don't know, obviously, how many we're going to have. This year, in first year, we had about 120 applications for Asclepios 1. Now we have raised it to about 200 applications from all around the world. There are currently about 45 left, and in the end, well, there will be 8 as usual, but then the last phase is going to be some interviews with space psychologists, with astronauts, with doctors, some sports, also sports tests, and a bunch of other stuff that, again, I won't go into details. And for this year, we have just a few examples of some of our astronauts. You have Joshua here, and you can also find Joshua there. So if you want to ask questions afterward, it's your guy. So he is, if I say something wrong, you tell me. So he's a master's student in astronautics and space engineering at Cranfield University. And he has done, so that's like sort of like the extras that when we look at the CV, for us, it looks good, and this is what makes you basically go through at least the first phase. This is another example of Somaya, who is a Moroccan student from EPFL, and that's like some of like the extras that she did, and that also made her go through. And so finally, I'm proud to present the Asclepios 2 astronaut crew. We have 9 astronauts. So we have Katie from the US, Tatiana from Chile and Canada, Zaria from South Africa and Ireland, Julia from Austria, Elena from Spain, Roman from Switzerland. We at least have one for a Swiss-based mission, Sumaya from Morocco, Joshua from Great Britain, and finally Felix, also here, from Germany. So we have 2 of our astronauts here and 2 of last year's astronauts, also Eleanor included, she was the crew commander, and Sebastian, our payload engineer. So again, if you have questions for them, also don't hesitate. So this year, last year, the crew was called Genesis. This year, it's called Atlas. So this is the repartition that we have in our crew. So we have the 6 astronauts that have been selected and that will go into base. So we have the crew commander, 2 health officers that take care of everything related to medicine. So they'll be trained to be able to assess any medical condition that the astronauts may suffer during the 2 weeks mission. We have our payload engineer, which should know everything related to all like the scientific experiments and how to handle it if there is a problem. Then base engineer, who knows everything base related, inventory, what is where, and the protocols. And then finally our communication specialist. So this makes it to 6, and then we have 3 backups, meaning that these are astronauts that have been selected in the line. They are trained exactly the same way as the 6 others, but they stay, as I presented earlier with our mission control center, they stay as, because we know that having someone that really knows the astronauts that are in the base is really important when we want to communicate for this 2 weeks mission, to make sure that there is no loss of information, and also that they can feel and give us some hints about whether they feel good, whether they feel that there might be a problem that they're not talking about, and things like that. So we also have this help from them. And so this year we have Felix for now, which are roles that can still change until the April trainings, but for now we have Felix as our crew commander, Joshua and Elena as our health officers, then Somaya, payload expert, communication specialist Katie, base engineer Zarya, and finally our 3 Capcoms, Tatiana, Roman, and Julia. So this is the repartition that we have decided after the first in-person trainings that we did in February, that I will present just after. And as I said, they can still change, because so we basically train them for about 1/3 of the trainings, then we give the roles. We see for the second third how they do in these roles, whether there are still changes that needs to be made, and then after 2/3 we fix the roles, and then for the last third we have fixed roles so that they can be trained also as a team, but also more individually, specifically for the roles that they're going to have during the mission that need specific training. And talking about the training, so we have sort of like 3 different training setups. So we have what we call the basic trainings, which are essential for all crew members. Then we have the specific trainings, which are tailored according to the mission characteristics, meaning mainly all the scientific experiments that we try beforehand, so we can test the protocols, give feedback, so that for the mission all protocols are good to go. And then finally the advanced training that are more based into their roles that they have for the mission. So just a few examples of the trainings that they had, as it's an international team. The first sort of third part was done remotely. So we have a basic space knowledge that was given by Marc Toussaint, one of our mentors, who worked about 30 years at ESA launching Ariane. Then we have some also basic Russian classes. As we know, Russian language is still important nowadays in the space field. If you fly in a Soyuz or something, it might be needed, so we try to give them a little bit of basics on that. Public speaking, which is also important, as they're going to be in front of a lot of medias. We want to make sure that they present well, that they're comfortable also talking to medias, as this is a job that they might have to do later on if they're selected as astronauts. And then some psychology trainings, which are really important to be able to prepare mentally beforehand on how living 2 weeks isolated with a team of 6 can actually work. And we have also a support. So we have one psychologist that gives all the trainings and help for the recruitment, and we also have one that can be called at any time before the mission, but also during the mission as a support if any of the astronauts actually needs it. And so these are the trainings that I was talking about. These are pictures of our extreme environment workshop that we did in February in a place called Verbier, which is a ski resort in Switzerland. And so we went there because we wanted to go into extreme for 6 days. Last year we did a sort of similar workshop for Asclepios 1, which was only 3 days, but we also knew that this year we only had 1 year to bond the team to create this family that is going to work together, so we had to push them harder. So we went for 6 days in Verbier, first for 3 days with Mike Horn. I don't know if you know him, he's a famous Swiss explorer. He's the first one who went up to the North Pole in the 90 days expedition, and in the 90 days he spent 45 in complete darkness, which was quite difficult, I would say. I didn't experience it, but it appeared from what he says. He circumnavigated the world, I don't know, 20 times. I mean, it's crazy. And so we did training with him so that all the astronauts can learn about his mentality, about how he thinks, and about how he can push his limits. So this was more of like a personal training, sort of, where everyone can learn about the mentality. We, as you can see here in the picture, we slept outside by about minus 15 degrees with sleeping bags only of 0 degrees, which was the purpose of being cold, so we didn't sleep. It was quite a long night, and after this training we stayed in Verbier, but we went up to 2,500 meters altitude, and we did a camp on an iced lake with Alban Michon, who is also a French explorer, and he's specialized in diving and more specialized into ice diving. So obviously diving is important because it's an environment on Earth where you feel less the weight of what you have on you. So a lot of astronauts train on that with like modules of the ISS and stuff, which we obviously don't have the money to reproduce. But we try to add to this diving, which is already hard if you have never done it, the ice diving, because, well, basically you dig one hole, then you dive from that hole, and if you have a problem, well, if you want to go out, you have to go back to the only hole that you dig. So basically, you have to manage your stress, and if you're 50 meters away from the hole and there is a problem, well, don't panic, stay calm, and, well, you have to get out. Obviously not on your own, you have an instructor always with you, but this is still this like under pressure environment that we wanted to reproduce. The first night we arrived, we actually didn't, well, that was the night after we didn't sleep with Mike. We didn't have time to eat for the day. We took the worst storm of the year, about 140 kilometers wind, but the camp was not settled. So we had nothing, we were just out there. It was 7 p.m. We didn't have time to do anything, and we had 2 hours to protect ourselves basically from the wind and the storm. We actually lost 2 tents during that night, and he said that, well, he never lost any tents in all of his expeditions. He went to like Greenland, and he was like, well, I lost a tent in Switzerland, what the fuck? Which was really funny, but yeah, we lost 2. We recovered 1, but one that we never found back. So that's just some pictures of our training, because we ice dive by day, but also by night, because the environment changes. So we obviously provide some external light, but it's, I mean, quite a different experience. You can ask the astronauts, they did it, we did it also. It's really a different mood. And we also did some immersion into the cold water, about 2 degrees, in swimsuits, also because he basically taught us some like respiration trainings and stuff that we wanted to apply, because when you go into that cold, well, your breath instantly stops for like a few seconds, so you have to be able also to manage, don't panic, and like stay relaxed. So this is just a video of our experience that we had that I just talked about. this was about 1 minute and 30 seconds video of our experience that we lived for 6 days. And to wrap up, I just want to talk about the few upcoming trainings that we have before the mission. This is going to be interesting for Mark, as this is about geology. So we have, obviously, geology training that is upcoming in May, where basically we're going to work with a company that's called Girls on Ice. Maybe you're aware of it. It's a worldwide company, but every country has like its own people working there that are specified into geology, glaciology, and all the things to be able to recognize the rocks, recognize which rocks might contain water for our experiments, so which rocks would we actually need to test our experiments on. And finally, the Austrian Space Forum mentioned this as what we call a dress rehearsal, where the astronauts, so we simulate the mission before the mission. So we do a simulation of something that's already a simulation, yes. And that's 2 days where basically we try all our procedures and protocols to make sure that they're accurate, to make the changes before the mission such that we don't have problems in our procedures before, where the astronauts are going to live in a bunker for 2 days together, and where we can also try and train our team on the Mission Control Center. So with this, I thank you for your attention, and let's shoot for the moon together.
I just want to add something before we finish. We will open, we will open our new call for members in May. So the Analogue Austrian selection for the Asclepios 3 are already ongoing. You can participate to the Asclepios 4 next year. But our team in May will search for new members taking care of science, design, astronaut, management, communication. So keep an eye on it if you're still a student or you are interested in becoming a mentor and you think you have something to give to our project. In May you will find more information on the website. And yeah, of course, questions probably.
So yeah, I'm a bit biased, obviously, because I was part of the team last year, and just want to say this is something absolutely admirable they do. Obviously, all Analogue space missions are, but I'm really always proud to see your work because it's so incredible what students can do. So never underestimate their work. It's just wow. My question is, since I'm biased, how did you see the mission evolve? So we had Asclepios 1, now we're getting ready to have Asclepios 3, while obviously Asclepios 2 is still ongoing. What is the main difference, what is the main thing that you've learned from the beginning till now?
I guess I'll answer because I was the only one in Asclepios 1 also. In Asclepios 1 I was the recruitment officer, meaning that I recruited the astronauts I'm currently working with right now. And I think what is amazing is that we basically built on everything that was already incredible from everything that was done for the first 2 years, for the first mission, by our friends Chloe and Elfie, who created this Asclepios association, and we tried to build on this with the contacts that we had last year, increasing the network also of students that we can get from all over the world that want to be involved in this mission. And we basically, I think we built on the past to make the new stones, to increase the realism of the mission as we go on. And from what we see, the cool thing is that most of the people we contact are keen to help, and even if they can't help themselves, they try to give us contacts on persons that can actually help, which is really interesting because we always have a positive feedback from anyone that we can, well, basically showcase and broadcast the association to, or trying to help us. And that's what's super rewarding as a student, to see that you can actually do great projects and that you also have others that are following you and pushing you to always go forward.
Questions? as usual, come forward. Oh, was it too clear? Come on. Go on up to the microphone.
Oh, I can speak loud otherwise.
Very loud.
Very loud.
Well, you need to get the stage. I was just pointing to it.
Hi, well, first off, thank you for a great presentation. It was really interesting. I'm interested in your science projects. 3 of them were in the lunar water extraction. How are you going to simulate this, or what other studies you're actually going to do on a day-to-day basis in the fortress?
So, of course, we are not on the moon, so we don't have access to a regolith yet. But our scientific projects then are mostly related to engineering challenges. So, what can an astronaut do with an instrument he didn't create in 2 weeks? So, our universities and companies that work with us, in that case the Polytechnical School of Milan and MIT and EPFL, will ask us to collect data for testing their mechanisms. For example, the MIT one, so hydration, is a project that wants to collect water. So we will probably try to use it on the Swiss mountains based on their protocols. So we don't implement the protocols, we collaborate with them, and they ask us to test their products within the 2 weeks. It means that all the projects require the time schedule of the project and having people doing stressful conditions, such like an analog base. For example, for the water extraction, we would probably try to test the mechanism on Earth, because it's actually a mechanism that wants to try to extract water without pollution of sand and regolith or any kind of ground element during extraction. So that's testable. But you can really test the design of the experiments, collect data in different ways. And the specificity is that our astronaut will be under stress and will have 2 weeks to do the experiments. Hope this answered the question. Lunar spectrometer, for example, we participate to a competition. For example, we are building it with another EPFL association called Explore. They participate to a rover competition every year. They need a scientific payload, so our astronaut will learn how to use the rover, and we will send our spectrometer to the competition. So it's kind of collaboration, different levels.
Any other questions? I go on.
So I saw that you've got 3 backup astronauts that then go to Capcom, is that right? So what do you do if, say, 2 of your astronauts are too unwell for the mission, and therefore you either lose astronauts or you lose Capcom?
During the mission, you mean, or before?
Yeah, well, over the duration of the mission, yeah.
So obviously, the goal of the Capcom and why we train them exactly the same way is that in case there is any problem, obviously before the mission, then they can take over as if nothing happened. Then we have the question of, yes, what do we do during the mission in case one of the astronauts has a problem? So this is something that still under discussion, but it obviously depends on the situation. So if this is a medical emergency and that we have to evacuate the astronauts from the base, obviously this is for some time a sort of like end of simulation, because then we have to take some people inside the base, which is supposed to be isolated, to take out the astronauts. So this would be a sort of like, end of mission, what we call a red flag. Then if this is something that we can handle with our specialists that we have from the Mission Control Center, if this is a medical emergency, for example, we call our doctor and we follow all the protocols that we set up. We have basically a medical procedure manual that's about 100 pages long of procedures, of all medical procedures, of all medication that they have access to in the base that do not require any specific skills as a trained doctor would have, such that the health officers, we have 2 inside the base, have been trained before and can follow all the procedures and the gesture that they would have from the trained BME that we have in the MCC. Then if we have problems with the Capcom that we actually have inside the Mission Control Center, what happens is that we want to have as a replacement of the Capcoms, the one that know most the astronauts that are inside the base again. So we're probably going to have the members that are in the astronaut team. So for example, the recruitment and training officer that I showed previously, that also does all the trainings with the astronauts without actually being an astronaut, that can take over this role as a Capcom. And then if we have to replace more, then we're going to go again in the astronaut team and so on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I only saw your message that you want me to.
What is the balance and kind of the thought process that the Asclepios team has in terms of striking that balance between making the mission intense and realistic, but also accessible for people that have physical impairments, who financially might not be able to? Have you explored options that might be able to have options for both?
Yes, so of course what I meant at the beginning with the international mission is that we really want to try to give the opportunity to do this experience to people coming from any country, independently from their financial status or their time zone. So of course it is a challenge, as a lot of challenges in terms of sponsoring, but once you are an analog astronaut, for example for the Asclepios team, you don't pay the trainings, we try not to make you pay the equipment if we can, and you don't pay even internal transports while you're in Switzerland. The same is done for the members of the team if they are required to be there. So if you want to come and visit Lausanne because you want to see the team, you won't be sponsored by us, but if the team requires for you to come to Switzerland because of something going on, we have a budget allocated to this. Yes?
Where does the budget come from?
That's a great question. So partially we... Yes, so for example, most of our budget comes from in-kind donations. So for example, when we went to Verviers for the trainings, the location itself sponsored our trainings almost totally. We have a lot of in-kind donations. For example, for the equipment, we have Columbia that gave us the clothing for the trainings. We have Lyophilis & Co., Lyophilis Food. But we also have kind philanthropists that wants to collaborate with us. Yeah, this is one of the clothing we had for the trainings. Wow. Yes. So yeah, thank you for our model, Loïc. Wow. Yes, philanthropists, mostly university partners that we make. So we offer outreach and different kind of things in exchange of their help, in-kind donations, and through our mentors that helps us out a lot with that as well.
Awesome, so a bit early, but hi Steve, you ready? Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so just a small comment that IC Space was not possible without Asclepios. They had an Eleanor collaborating with us and having the analog astronauts, most of them came actually from Asclepios. They had all the qualified skill sets, they had the extreme environment training that we needed. And getting people that have the right mentality and extreme environment training, such as what you just saw in that video, is very impressive. So thank you so much and keep going.